Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us here today. It is Tuesday, Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. Whether you're listening on the radio or one of the YouTube platforms, whether it's Irish Breakdown, Sports Radio, WSBT, always great to have you with us. Today is Stock Up, Stock Down, a.k.a. Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down. We're going to get into that. Trevor Trowbridge, my man, is with me here today. He's going to be become a regular these next couple of weeks while that other lug that we know is off gallivanting around the world on his honeymoon. How are you today, Trevor?
I'm good. I'm not gallivanting around the world, but I get to be here doing some Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down. I'm excited, man.
That's right, baby. Gallivanting around your apartment, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Keeping an eye on my big old dog and just talking some Notre Dame football, man. Can't complain too much.
Absolutely. Doing what you got to do. We've got Notre Dame and NC State coming up this Saturday. It's another 3:30 kickoff, and you will hear the call here on Sports Radio, WSBT, as well as Sunny 101.5 here in South Bend, and, of course, streaming live in the Odyssey app on the Notre Dame Radio Network. Game day coverage starts at 11 o'clock this Saturday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time, of course. Tim Ground, Jimmy Rizzeri, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka, and other great guests will be over at the linebacker before the Fighting Irish take on the Wolfpack this Saturday. They'll have special guests joining them as always as well. So 11 o'clock this Saturday, the fun begins over at the linebacker. Swandong of the YouTube check wants to know if there's going to be some sports beating today. Are you planning on beating anyone, or what's up with that, Trevor?
It wasn't on my agenda. I'm looking at your itinerary you sent over. No beating.
No beatings on the. I'm sure he means sports betting, since Trevor also hosts the. Just say it.
Spread option.
I knew spread was in there, and I was like, I knew it wasn't like the point spread, the spread option. My mind is still in the wrong place. Okay, so the spread option Thursdays still?
Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern.
That's what I thought. You and Vince. Will Vince be with you this week?
He will.
Okay. His availability getting back to normal. Right.
Yes, he is off the PUP list, and he's back up there, man. So we went live last Thursday, a little bit later at 9 p.m., but we should be in for our regular scheduled programming on the CFB Nation YouTube channel, CFB Nation podcast. We'll go live on YouTube, 8 p.m. Eastern time this Thursday.
All right, there you go. That is the spread option. You can check it out anytime. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on that's on the College Football Nation YouTube channel. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought. Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down. It's our weekly stock check of Notre Dame football. Whose stock rose? Whose stock fell after Notre Dame's 28-7 win over Boise State on Saturday? I just want to jump in here and start off, Trevor, with Chris Ash, because Vince and I were somewhat hesitant to give him a stock up last week after the win over Arkansas. Vince yesterday still seems a little hesitant, like what credit he wants to give Chris Ash, wherever you want to go. So where are you on Chris Ash's stock right now after a 28-7 win over the Broncos Saturday?
I think it's definitely on the rise. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the defensive performance against Arkansas, and we talked about how, hey, this is the outlier. You had 3 rough games and 1 good game. Mm-hmm. What's going to start to be the true form of this defense? Well, we watched them hold an offense that at the end of the day, Boise State went into that game averaging 520 total yards of offense. Notre Dame held them to 205 yards less, held them to 7 total points.
Exactly.
That's a good performance. I mean, that's what you ask this defense to do.
Because we can obviously have discussions about, okay, who's actually calling the shots. The defense has changed. It looked a lot different Saturday. Definitely different than any other game that it has looked this season. The other side of that, and we played a clip from Marcus Freeman yesterday talking about, well, Boise State, more 12 personnel. So we saw three more linebackers on the field like Notre Dame used to do. So, maybe that had something to do with it. Let's hope it's not all just about that, because you had more linebackers because of the kind of personnel. But I mean, when you rattle off the numbers like you did, I mean, Boise was averaging just a little under 40 points per game. They scored 7. And then, like you said, they had 315 total yards. That's more than 200 yards less than what they've been averaging this season. So Chris Ash is still the defensive coordinator. You may need to be convinced to be truly sold that what we're seeing is a long-term trend and not just a short-term thing. But we have to give credit where credit is due, I think, at this point. Like, we're seeing the defense start to trend in the right direction. We didn't see a bunch of blown and busted coverages against Boise State with a decent group of wide receivers, I think. Like, if you start with that, and like, the defense has allowed a total of 27 points in the last 2.5 games, going back to Purdue, the last half of Purdue, and then Arkansas and Boise State. And to your point, Trevor, the last two offenses were both averaging over 500 yards of total offense. Neither one of them even got to 400 yards of total offense against Notre Dame's defense.
No, I mean, to put some numbers behind what you're talking about, Arkansas was 187 yards under their season average, and Boise State was 205 yards under. I mean,
yeah,
we're talking about a defensive performance. Boise State didn't cross their own 40-yard line until the 4th drive of the game. That's pretty darn good.
Which seems, yeah, that's very good. That's very good.
Yeah, it's taken me a while to come around to it, and this isn't me shouting from the rooftops that Chris Ash is about to win the assistant coach of the year award, or he's not Al Golden's second coming. But what he is he's starting to fill in some of the missing pieces, whether some people like it or not. And as long as this defense can continue ascending, because you are still kind of looking at, they've played well the last 2.5 games and struggled the first 2.5 games.
Right.
This NC State game is going to be a huge kind of measuring tool to see where they're actually at.
I think so as well. And I mean, at least numbers wise, NC State's offense not nearly as good as either Arkansas or Boise State's offense. Now, you can take Boise's numbers with a grain of salt because of some of the teams that they played beforehand, but still, they were against the competition they were playing. They were putting up some pretty good numbers. Joe in the YouTube chat says 2 leafs of a Shamrock Up. And I think that's fair. I might go closer to 2.5 or even 3 Shamrocks if I'm going like a 4-leaf clover and I'm gauging how many I'm going to give him, because last week we just basically said, okay, he did it once. There were still some busted coverages, still a couple of big explosive plays that Arkansas was able to hit. But the most important number is still the points. They only gave up 13 points to Arkansas. They only gave up 7 points to Boise State. And I think that maybe it definitely felt less comfortable because Notre Dame's offense also wasn't quite firing on the same cylinders Saturday against the Broncos that they had been prior to that. So the game was obviously closer. But I think that from that perspective, you probably give even more credit to Ash and the defense, because the defense needed to be able to keep Notre Dame in the game, and they delivered from that aspect.
I think it's kind of interesting, the parity from last year to this year. In Game 5 last year, it was the defense that kind of held that team together, but then struggled early against Louisville, if you all remember. And It was the offense that kind of had to show up and rise to the occasion. They scored on their first 3 drives. And that was kind of the moment the team came together and said, the defense could look at the offense and say, hey, tip my cap to you. We don't have to hold every single team that we played at 10 points. Well, rewind back to a couple days ago on Saturday, I think this was the moment where the Notre Dame offense could kind of look at this defense and say, okay, thank goodness we don't have to score 50 points every single week. The parity's crazy.
Exactly. I'm going to get back to a couple of these comments here in the YouTube chat in a second. I'm going to play, because of course Chris Ash came up at the press conference yesterday, and Marcus Freeman talked about Chris Ash and kind of what he continues to see from his defensive coordinator.
There's a lot of things that we're greedy people. Like, I think I said it after the game, your standard's perfection, and it has to be that. It's never going to be that. But you can't be okay with that, right? Like, if you're not okay with it, now you have the capacity, understanding that let's find the answers to get closer to that. But, I know who created this. I think the best thing for me in these 5 weeks was being with Coach Ash through good times, but now for a while was tough times, and saying, all right, I think I know the type of competitor and person he is and leader he is, but let's see. And I wasn't surprised one bit. And the ability for him to stay steady as the leader, to rally the troops, to make decisions, defensive personnel-wise, schematically, to help us play with more velocity. That's what I've been most impressed with, and they'll continue to get better.
All right, so there you go. The defense will continue to get better under Chris Ash, is what Marcus Freeman is saying. Again, to Josh's point here in the YouTube chat, we still don't know. I do think that Marcus Freeman has to have his thumb on some things, going back to that uncomfortable meeting the day after Purdue. Like, Chris Ash, yeah, you're still calling the shots. You're still putting together the defensive game plan. But I have to think that Marcus Freeman has a lot more influence and oversight just in terms of what he wants that to look like compared to what we saw the first 3 games. Don't you?
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Marcus Freeman's a defensive head coach. And he's the stamp of approval of him is a good defense. That's what Notre Dame has been known for. Going into this season, there were questions around the offense and how CJ Carr would adjust, and some transfer portal receivers have to pan out. What everybody talked about was Notre Dame's run game and a stout defense because they had head coach Marcus Freeman. So I agree completely that he kind of has to have his hand kind of divvied up all over the defense for sure.
Everyone in the YouTube chat, well, not everyone, but a lot of people worked up about the logo that on the photo that we're using for Marcus Freeman's sound bites in the YouTube. Everyone's a lot of angst over the alternate logo and the kind of results, I guess, that they believe it produced over the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, we'll file that in the same cabinet of, the turf being terrible and the Jumbotron is dumb and the
Exactly.
DJ's horrible. We'll file it in that one.
And a lot of those things might be true, but yeah, what actual impact do they have on the game itself? Swandong, by the way, wants to know how you remember all those numbers off the top.
You know what, man? I'm not entirely sure. It's football number. It's sports specific. I don't know why, but I just have a knack for remembering those song lyrics and movie quotes. And I've always said that if I could remember school material like that, I would have been a Harvard grad. But unfortunately,
we're in the same. We're in the same boat. Very simpatico, like from Inglorious Bastards on down.
Yeah.
I actually in my rehearsal dinner toast that I gave, I worked 3 different movies into my rehearsal dinner.
I would clap louder if it wasn't too loud into the microphone.
No one ever told me, no one ever came up and said they recognized it. My wife did say, well, there was a movie quote in there, right? I said, well, there was actually 3 separate. There was a Hangover in there. There was Wedding Crashers, and there was Old School. Like all 3.
Okay.
Got worked in at different points.
So, I love that.
Not real long, but, short. Because if you remember, Wedding Crashers, Old School, both obviously Wedding Crashers had a wedding thing, but Old School started off with a wedding.
That's right.
So that's right. Columbus wasn't looking for America, but it worked out for everyone. So.
Oh, that's good. What line did you work in from The Hangover?
The Hangover was it was actually I kind of started it off as a joke with, you remember when they're up on the roof and Zach Galifianakis is getting ready to make his toast and he goes, how about that drive-in? I guess that's why they call it Sin City.
Oh, that's fantastic. I was very curious when you said The Hangover. I was like, that's interesting.
I know. Because there are a lot of different ways you could go with The Hangover, but for a wedding rehearsal toast, I don't know that there were a whole lot, but yes,
that's great.
All right, well, How about CJ Carr? Where do you give him up? Do you give him down? Is he in a holding pattern after Saturday? What do you think about him?
I'd say it's a hold. I don't think that his performance was bad enough to say that his stock fell. Definitely didn't rise, but I think he just showed that he was human. I mean, honestly, because through the first couple of weeks, man, he was absolutely on fire. But look, if we're going to talk about CJ Carr's off day being 15 to 23 for a buck 89 and 2 touchdowns, it's a halfway decent off day. It's not too long. A season ago, if Riley Leonard in a game in the regular season went 15 of 23 for 189 yards and 2 touchdowns, we're talking about how this passing offense is electric and coming alive.
We'd be drooling over it. Yes, exactly.
100%.
Exactly. That's a great point. And I don't think CJ Carr is up by any means, but with the start that he's had to his career, it's ridiculous to think that it could continue to ascend in the direction that it was. At some point, there had to be not valleys, but plateaus at least. And if this is a minor plateau in a 12-game season, as you said, as you crank off those numbers once again, yeah, as Robin says, he's doing just fine. I don't think any of us are going to nitpick him. Look, when you have a running game and you have those running backs and you have that offensive line that you can lean on, and we'll talk about, I'm sure, the offensive line here in a second. I think that I think you can win a lot of games with the kind of performance that you got from CJ Carr. I realize he missed a couple of throws, but again, not every quarterback is going to. No quarterback completes 100% of his passes. There's a reason that even 70% is a really good passing mark. He missed a couple deep shots, yeah, but at the same time, he played a very good game. Didn't turn the ball over once. Faced more blitzes from Boise State than he has faced all season so far, and came out of it without throwing in interceptions or giving up any sacks. So I think that's a good day for CJ Carr. And again, I don't put him in the stock up or stock down category. I just put him where he's holding right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a redshirt freshman that was playing in a game with 24 combined penalties for a combined total of 224 penalty yards. So that's a pretty decent day at the office.
Absolutely. Along with Trevor Trowbridge, I'm Sean Stires. It is Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, our weekly stock check of Notre Dame football. We're going to check in whose stock rose the most after Boise State last week, and we'll also hit some others whose stock rose. I think it's a little bit harder even to find stock downs. We'll see if either one of us have any stock downs this week. I see a little twinkle in Trevor's eye, so maybe he's got someone on the top of his mind. We'll do that when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues, along with Trevor Trowbridge, Sean Stires at Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, our weekly Notre Dame football stock check. Of course, this one coming out of Boise State, heading towards NC State. We've talked a little bit about Chris Ash, defensive coordinator, quarterback CJ Carr. Trevor, whose stock do you think rose the most with the Boise State game coming out of Boise State?
If I had to pick any one particular player, I'd probably say Leonard Moore. And his stock was already pretty high to begin with, but I think this performance kind of reminded people, hey, the Notre Dame defense struggled a little bit to start the season. Some of their premier players started to get maybe pushed to the wayside a little bit. And I think Leonard Moore's performance against Boise State was just a nice reminder of, hey, I am still the best cover corner in college football. Absolutely.
And that's who I've got as well. I've got others in the stock up department, obviously, but in terms of who's rose the most, I think it has to be Leonard Moore, because the guy, unfortunately, not his fault, but he was injured for a couple of weeks and we didn't get to see him out there. And I think while he was out, things were a little bit dicier. I think getting him back definitely had some impact on some things that happened. And when you're able to come right out and pick off a couple of passes and also force a fumble, I mean, you're responsible for 3 turnovers in your first game back. Not a bad day. And then he had 6 tackles on top of it as well, and just basically showed what made him a preseason All-American coming into this year, and showed immediate impact. So I think he's top of the heap for me as well in terms of stock up.
Yeah, impact was felt right away. I mean, he was out against Purdue and Arkansas, and in those games, Notre Dame gave up a combined 10 passing plays at 20 yards or longer.
Oof.
He comes back against Boise State. They had 1. I don't think the secret ingredient is all that hard to figure out.
No kidding. And again, I think Boise State, in terms of overall receiving core, I think that their receivers probably better than either Arkansas or Purdue.
Arkansas, it's definitely a little closer. I would say yes over Purdue, though. I mean,
yeah.
Latrell Caples, they got some good guys on the perimeter for sure.
Yep. So who else you got in your stock up department?
Oddly enough, a lot of them are on defense.
Mine too.
Because I mean, look, Sean, at the end of the day, did you see anything from the offense that surprised you that you just didn't expect? Jeremiah Love runs wild. Jadarian Price, ends the game with over 80 rushing yards despite he only had 1 carry in the first half.
I will. Yeah. Like if we're going individuals, I would definitely say that. But I think my biggest stock up on the offensive side of the ball is just the offensive line. Like, I think that, their best overall game as a unit. Now, did guys give up some plays? Sure. But again, no sacks. Boise State had just 8 pressures, according to PFF, in the game. CJ Carr against the blitz was 6 of 8 for 95 yards and a touchdown. And Notre Dame also had 200 rushing yards and averaged 6.5 yards per carry. You don't do that if you're offensive. Even as good as the quarterback and the running backs are, you still don't do that if you don't have an offensive line performing the way it's supposed to.
Oh, 100%. I think it was really impressive, too, the way that both offensive tackles bounced back.
Yeah.
Emil Wagner and Anthony Knapp both graded out as Notre Dame's 2 highest pass blockers from Saturday's game. And that was impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, like, Boise State's guys, their group of 6, are they the biggest and fastest and strongest Notre Dame will face all year? No. But at the same time, I think that when you look at the majority of the rest of Notre Dame's schedule, I think that their defense is probably better than any of the defenses Notre Dame's going to see the rest of the way.
Probably. We're also talking about players. Jaden Virgin Morgan, one of Boise State's defensive ends, he led the team last year in pressures and tackles for a loss. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Emil Wagner or Anthony Knapp allowed a single pressure.
Right.
And so we're talking about a performance from 2 offensive tackles that 2 weeks ago were allowing free runners to the quarterback on quit game.
Right.
And we're talking about like free rushers from Purdue, all respect to the Boilermakers.
Freudian
Not all
there?
disrespect. Ooh. All respect to the Boilermakers, but they didn't have a Jaden Virgin Morgan on their team or a Braxton Feely on their team. I was impressed.
I was too. Really, again, I think it's the best performance that the line has had as a unit this season, and now they've just got to keep continuing to build on that. I really don't, okay, Pittsburgh, they'll be a decent defensive team. Navy can do some things, whatever. Like USC will have some bodies, so like some bigger sized bodies and stuff like that. But I don't think that they're going to see. I don't think they're going to see a defense that's as well coached as Boise State. Like again, maybe with the exception of Navy, like if you throw Navy into that, because their body sizes and all that are going to be different. But just a really top-notch performance by Notre Dame's offensive line.
Agreed. I agree with you completely.
So do you have any other nominees from the defensive side?
Oh, I do. One of them is Tay Johnson. That
for sure.
That kid is growing with every single rep, every single quarter that he's playing in, and we saw him continue to grow in coverage. But where I continue to be impressed with Tay Johnson, that dude lays the lumber when he flies downhill. Man, he was laying some hits on Saturday. That is for sure.
And he's fun to watch, like in real time. We're getting to see this guy grow up and really just become this legit big-time safety. And having him on the field, it just complements everything else so much. Like we haven't talked about Adon Schuler nearly as much the last couple of weeks since Tay Johnson has been on the field. It just feels like he's at a very high comfort level right now. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that when you had Tay Johnson, Leonard Moore, and Devontae Smith finally all on the field together at the same time, along with, oh, by the way, Adon Schuler. And, you've got all those guys. Christian Gray, maybe he's going to be the guy that you've got to choose to pick on every now and then. But I feel like he's holding his own as well. But, again, Tay Johnson has just been such a huge part of, I think, how this defense has started to turn around the last couple games.
Yeah, they're just playing in an overall better rhythm. Like, look, Tay Johnson is the field safety and Christian Gray is the field corner. It's no secret that teams are going to try to attack Christian Gray. He's been targeted 29 times already this season. But you go and you look at now how the dynamic of the secondary is going to work. You're comfortable leaving Leonard Moore on an island. Say, hey, look, one-on-one, we trust you. And now instead of having Jalen Stroman, who's more of an alley safety over top, you now have Tay Johnson kind of giving Christian Gray a little bit of a cushion. And so I think just they're flowing a lot better. Tay Johnson's stock is continuing to rise for me.
So I've got both the defensive front as well as the linebackers on my stock up as well. And I'm kind of I started thinking about it. The game that the defensive front had, when we talk about how these different units complement each other, according to Pro Football Focus, Notre Dame's defensive line had 23 pressures against the Broncos. They averaged a little under 13 pressures in the first 4 games of the season. So again, dramatically up. Now, having a backup center in there for Boise State, there was some impact there for sure. But I just felt like we finally saw a different level from these guys. But again, I think a lot of it goes back to a different style that they've begun to play the last couple of weeks, regardless of who's responsible for that. But I feel like that had an impact on the linebackers as well, because I also felt like the linebackers had probably their best game of the season overall. What'd you think?
I agree. The linebacker stock is also very much up for me. If you guys want a clear indication of if the defense is truly making that jump or if this was more Boise State specific, it was no secret what Boise State was wanting to do on offense. They were going to come out in 12 personnel and try to run the football downhill. Chris Ash, to his credit, did a really good job of releasing the linebackers and letting them fly downhill and attack the football.
Mm-hmm.
This week, they play an NC State offense that likes to take a few more shots over top, but they do still have a really good running back in Hollywood Smothers. So if Notre Dame's defense truly took the step that we're hoping that we're seeing it correctly, the linebackers are going to continue to play aggressively. But just in terms of the Boise State game, Sean, I agree with you completely. The linebacker stock definitely rose.
Yeah, and again, like when you look at what the linebackers did, Kingston Viliamu-Asa and Jaden Osbury had 8 tackles each, to your point about getting downhill, making tackles. Drake Bowen had 5, Jalen Sneed had 3, and those 4 guys combined for 3.5 sacks as well. Like they played in that game much more reminiscent of what we got used to seeing them play last year. But to the point you just made, not going to take anything away from them because this is stock up and stock down based on what we saw against Boise State.
Right.
But we do still have to wonder just how much this applies to what's going to be going forward, because it's going to be a different kind of opponent they're going to see this week.
And almost the most important number, Sean, for the linebackers is you talked about all of their combined tackles. Only one linebacker had a missed tackle on Saturday.
Amazing.
Just one. And it was one missed tackle. And that is a huge step forward. But again, it begs the question, or it goes to show, hey, look, when you let these guys fly downhill and play fast, free, violent football, they're very effective football players. And that's what we saw.
Swandong says, with these linebackers, let's see some 46 Bears defense. I use it in Madden all the time. Have you ever played the Bears 46D, Trevor?
No, I can't say that I have.
The problem with that is the game of football has evolved just a little bit in the last 40 years since the 46 defense was successful. It has morphed a few different times, and so I don't know just exactly how that's going to play in 2025 against some of these spread offenses. And because like, full credit, they executed the game plan that they needed to execute against a different kind of personnel set than what they've seen. But there's a reason that third linebacker is off the field so much this year, because most teams aren't playing 12 personnel with 2 tight ends out there. They're playing 11 or even 10 or whatever it happens to be. And so you need the extra defensive back as opposed to the linebacker. And that means obviously you've got more space to cover. And that has been a challenge. And so that's the next step for Chris Ash as we kind of flip back and, on him a little bit. We started off talking about his stock is up, is how he makes that adjustment against what are going to be a lot different looking personnel sets as this season goes on.
Agreed.
Did anyone's stock take a hit in your estimation against Boise State, Trevor?
Not severely. I have some questions. Some of it's from the coaching staff. I'm not going to go as far to say that, Jaywan Sider's stock took a hit for me. I'm just puzzled as to, after watching what Jadarian Price did against Arkansas, why he had a carry in the first half. That one was questionable. That's usage, and it's not because,
right.
I understand you want to feed Jeremiah and all that, but
right.
The running back rotation wasn't great on Saturday.
I would agree with that. And we're actually going to talk a little Jadarian Price in rapid fire as well, kind of along those lines. Yeah, it's not a stock down, I don't think, for Jadarian Price, because when he got the football, look at what he did. He ended up with almost 100 yards in that long touchdown run himself. I think it's more about the running back coach. Jaywan Sider obviously has a different philosophy than Dylan McCullough did when it comes to how he wants to use these guys. And we talked about it coming into the season, because you talk to Jaywan Sider and it's much more, it's like, these are my studs and these are the guys I'm going to go with. And that's what we've seen. And it's like, you do still have 2 studs. Like he's still leaning, much more towards one than the other, it seemed like. But like these other guys in the room, they don't have that third down role or the short yardage role like Dylan McCullough had for these guys, keeping them active, keeping them involved. There are some things I like about that because we did used to complain quite a bit. Like, why is your best offensive player not on the field on third down in past seasons? And now you see more of Jeremiah Love on the field on third downs. But we also want to continue to see more of Jadarian Price because I don't think you need to necessarily wear down Jeremiah Love this early in the season after 4 games. Like when you look how the disparity in their carries right now.
It is interesting. I wonder how much the injuries played a factor. Like if Kedron Young was still healthy and if Aeneas Williams didn't have the elbow issues through the first couple weeks of the season,
True.
what would the rotation have looked like? I think that kind of put him in a shell to where it's like, okay, we still have 4 and 24. Let's ride with these 2 guys. And then they found a groove and stuck with it, and it's obviously been working. So I don't know. It's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I've got a big stock down for the Wildcat. If I don't see the Wildcat the rest of the season, I would be just fine with that. Like the Wildcat, as we've become accustomed to seeing it so far, is employed by Mike Denbrock. I will just go thumbs down, Wildcat. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Are there situations where it could be effective? Sure. I don't know if they're using it to try to set something up for down the road, but I'm with you. As of right now, it's just hand it off. Yeah. I mean, look to get the ball to the perimeter. CJ Carr is very accurate. I'm amazed that we haven't seen more passing red zone attempts.
Don't use your quarterback as a lead blocker. All of the above.
No. I stop with the designed runs down short goal line down a distance. Stop with the Wildcat. Just run the offense.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know where to put this. Like the kicking situation. Like if I look at it as kicking situation, I'd probably go stock down. I don't, Noah Burnett is injured, so it's not like I'm going to give him a stock down, but Eric Schmidt had that extra point blocked the other day, very low, basically, all but kicked it straight into the defensive line. So especially if Noah Burnett is going to have this lingering injury, they've got to get this figured out here pretty quickly because, like, I don't know. Well, let me put it this way. I think USC we definitely anticipate can be a much closer game than these games that we've seen the last few weeks. There's a much greater chance, and you need a healthy kicker who's able to make a field goal in that instance. So it's at least a concern, if not a stock down, the kicking situation for the Irish.
Yeah, you and I see that the exact same, man. I mean, look, as cool as the, reverse punt passes are and the 100-yard kick returns for touchdowns and, putting big old Bryce Young and Logan Thomas as gunners on kickoff, like all that is super fun to watch. But they've got to figure out something with the kicking game. This is now back-to-back seasons where your kicker has suffered significant injuries to their kicking leg that holds them out for weeks, and they've got to get that figured out.
Yeah. And it's very bizarre that you would have to, like last year, Dad had to come in, who's a chiropractor, and work out the kinks in his back and get him in line. I don't think that Noah Burnett has that luxury this year. So
no.
We'll take our last break of this hour. We've got more stock up, stock down to finish off hour number 1 of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Little Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, checking in on Notre Dame's stock after the Boise State game, heading towards NC State. Trevor, I just heard the weather forecast a second ago. Morning frost in the forecast over the next couple of days. Fall is officially here, but it's officially about here. I don't know. Frost means it's coming. You can actually break out the sweatshirts, I think.
I love that. Fall is my favorite season by far. I love the sports in the peak of fall. I like how you dress in fall. I mean, if I can walk around comfortably in like shorts and a hoodie, or like long sleeve shirt and shorts or something. And
I could live like that for sure.
Year round, man. That's fantastic. I love fall.
Yep. I agree. The kicking conversation. Andre wants to know if Vince's son is available. Unfortunately, it's still college. You can't transfer in the middle of a season. And then Scott L. Esquire was talking about Spencer Schrader, the Colts kicker. He having a great season, had that game-winning field goal a couple of weeks ago. The Colts are sitting there living large, and then unfortunately somebody ran into his knee or rolled into his knee and tore his ACL. Stinks for Spencer Schrader. So his season is done, unfortunately.
That does stink. I think he just won the Special Teams Player of the Month for September.
I think so, too.
For a rookie Special Teams Player of the Month or something.
He got one of those awards. Yeah, I know that. So stock up, stock down is what we've been doing. We've been doing this like on a weekly basis. So it's like stock check from week to week. But I was thinking about this morning, like where we are now after 5 games. Whose stock maybe do you think has risen the most since the end of last year? Whose has fallen the most since the end of last year?
Ooh, that's good. Okay.
Throw a little curveball.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, I'll start on offense.
Okay.
Gino Guidugli's stock has gone through the roof for me.
Really good one, and I hadn't thought about that, but that's There
were so many questions around his ability to develop a quarterback because, look, I mean, since he took over as a quarterback coach, they were getting transfer portal quarterbacks who seemingly digressed as passers. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of questions about CJ and Kenny, and CJ has come and put a lot of that to rest. So Gino Guidugli's stock is through the roof for me right now. Obviously, CJ Carr.
But I was going to say, like piggybacking on the Guidugli, when you look at what Steve Angeli did before his injury at Syracuse, now granted he's with the new team, but he doesn't perform like that if he wasn't developed the way he was supposed to be the last few years when under Gino.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, we even saw it a little bit last year with Riley Leonard and his progression as a passer. Because Sean, you and I have talked before on this show about sometimes when you get a transfer portal quarterback in, you kind of have to break them of some old habits to then build up some new habits. Yeah. We even saw that from Riley Leonard a bit last year. So, yeah, man, Gino Guidugli, invest, buy stock. That dude's
for sure. Yeah, I mean, CJ Carr is an obvious one because of the fact that he was, he played a handful of snaps against Purdue last year, and he's gone from that to being, I'm not even sure if it's arguable, but we can at least put arguably in front of it, the best first-year starting quarterback in the country right now, like the level he's played at so far.
Yeah, absolutely. CJ Carr is definitely in the conversation who's risen the most since the start of last season. Another one, Gerby Lambert at right guard. I know he rotated the first couple of games, but lately that dude has come on and he is absolutely moving people.
Mm-hmm.
Gerby Lambert's stock is up significantly from the start of the season.
I like that one. I'd put Jordan Faison in there. He's become the number one. If he's not, well, I mean, he's the number one target for sure. Like when you look at where the passes are going right now. Now, does Malachi Fields maybe have a few more highlight plays? And is he also, a big-time receiver? Yeah, I mean, you might call him 1A and 1B. But as of right now, Jordan Faison is at the top of the receptions list. He is he's definitely one of CJ Carr's favorite topics. And I think the key for him was just getting healthy after after that ankle sprain that he suffered in the opener last year against Texas A&M. He was just never completely healthy all season, or at least not till closer to the end of the season. And we're really seeing now what Faison can do. So I put him in a big stock up since the end of last year as well.
Couldn't agree more. We were wondering what Jordan Faison healthy looked like, and we're starting to see it. And right now he's the team leader in receptions and yards.
Yeah, exactly. So what about stock down since last year? Go ahead. I'll let you start.
I was going to say on offense, I mean, I hate to put him in this category, and some of it's just usage, but I don't know how you end the season better than what Jaden Greathouse did. And then his usage this year has just been an absolute, just a major question mark. It's been weird.
I agree. Like he was producing at the end of last year. And because of that, I think we all had pretty high expectations for Jaden Greathouse. We haven't seen it. Now he is a little banged up. He's supposed to be healthy this week. We'll see if he gets back out on the field this week. But I think it's hard not to put him in that category because of the way he finished last year, if nothing else. I've got to put Chris Ash in a stock down. The way things have started for him, there's just no way around that at this point.
Yeah, he's in a stock down from where he was at, but like we talked about, slowly on the rise. But big picture, stock down from where he was at. I'm trying to think of others.
A couple good ones here. Scott says Rubio's stock is up. I agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Because again, you're talking about a guy who was injured for a good chunk of last season, was a contributor toward the end of the season, especially after the injury to Riley Mills, but his stock definitely on the rise. Joe mentions Jason Onye. I don't know what to do with him, because it's just the unfortunate thing with Onye is there are all these offseason expectations, and it's really been like this for 3 years now. There have been all the offseason talk, and he's had good springs and stuff like that. It just hasn't translated into consistency once the season starts, though.
I think the tough thing with Jason Onye is I think people expected him to be Riley Mills, especially from a pass rushing standpoint. Big picture, I haven't been too disappointed with what I've seen from Jason Onye. Now, is he who I thought he was? No, but I think people also need to understand that he didn't play the last, 11 games of Notre Dame's regular season last year.
True.
And so he's kind of picking up where he left off in the middle of last year. So I'm giving him a little bit of grace. But if you were expecting, not you personally, but if you were expecting him to be the next Riley Mills, I would understand why, he hasn't lived up.
Yeah. And I mean, he has not been atrocious by any means. He just hasn't been nearly as impactful as I think a lot of people thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
Look, Marcus Freeman heaped a lot of praise on him and the interior defensive line in general coming into this season. And there's been some good and bad. They are still, like, the thing that doesn't show up in stats is how those defensive tackles have contributed, like, to stopping the run. Notre Dame is still a pretty good, like, of the major, like, the main defensive statistics, their run defense is actually pretty solid. Where are they sitting like right now? 45, 47, I think, nationally, something like that. They're still doing pretty good. They're only averaging around 3.5 yards per carry. Like, the run defense is still pretty good, and those guys play a big factor in that.
Yeah. No, you're right. They're 43rd in the country in rushing yards allowed. They are 47th in the country in yards per rush. They've only allowed 6 rushing touchdowns this season.
Yep. There you go. All right. I would put Tay Johnson into the big risers since last year as well. So, all right. That's going to do it for the first hour of the show. We will pause for the top of the hour. When we come back, it's rapid fire, and it'll be a 3-man rapid fire show along with Trevor Trowbridge, Sean Stires. Bobby Hensley's going to join us in hour number 2 as well. So buckle up. Who knows what's going to happen then? Rapid fire coming up, 6 o'clock hour, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour number 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat, and it's a 3-man crew now, along with Trevor Trowbridge, and joined by Bobby Hensley. Is this like maybe the second time you guys have done one of these together? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
The first time went well. Trevor seemed nice. I enjoyed chatting with him.
Bobby thinks they always go well.
I don't. Well, not when it's one-on-one. When it's just me and Sean, it never goes well.
That's right.
Wow, you're kind of rude today.
Rude? I thought that was like an arms open greeting in your world.
I just feel like you throw out the vibe that I'm negative, and I just have to live up to it. And I don't appreciate that.
Oh, okay. See, now you're coming in hot here. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it's cold in the studio, I'll tell you that.
We were doing some stock up, stock down in the last hour, and I forgot to mention this one that Stymie mentioned. Can I give a stock down to ACC officials? He says, I realize it was a penny stock to begin with, and yet somehow it still continues to plummet. That was bad. That was bad. When you think you're getting paid by the flag, you throw. I agree, Stymie. Big stock down to the ACC officiating crew for that game out there Saturday. 24 total accepted penalties in the game.
I always wonder, watching a game, if somebody's been called for holding a couple plays in a row, they're not going to call it 3 plays in a row, so might as well just keep doing it.
Just do it again.
Yeah, right.
Why change?
Yeah. But the penalties are ridiculous. They slow the whole game down, the whole flow of the game. The same issue happened on Monday Night Football last week. If you were watching one of the games, the Denver game, it's always bad.
I didn't even know you could buy stock in ACC officials.
I didn't even know there were ACC officials.
All right, Trevor, I'll start you with this first question. Do you buy or sell that Irish running back Jadarian Price needs the ball more?
Oh, buy. I'll take it a step further. He needs the ball more significantly earlier in games. I mean, we talked against Boise State. He had 1 carry the entire first half. And we're talking about a running back that has averaged more yards per carry than Jeremiah Love in every game this season except for one. And that was a game where Jeremiah Love went for 8.3 against Purdue, and Jadarian Price went for 8.2. So we're talking about a 0.1 difference. So, yes, I absolutely buy that.
So you're buying that. So this is interesting because I was told a few weeks ago when I said, is Price a better running back than Love right now for the Notre Dame system? No, I was told I was wrong by somebody that hosts this show. I don't know their name.
I don't think I told you that.
Oh, you said the only reason why it looks that way is that he's very talented, but that he gets the carries towards the end of drives and end of the games when the defense might be a little back on their heels, a little tired. You said that. So
are you sure you didn't have this conversation with some jabroni at work?
This
does not sound like
you and Jesse both got at me because I said this would have been the Texas A&M game. I was like, Price just looks really good. I don't know why they're not featuring him. And you can have it's not unheard of to have 2 great running backs at the same time. However, like Price just looked better at that point. Now Love has come back around with Arkansas game and and Boise State, but I think Price is your bell cow back almost right now. Maybe if you give Love those carries that you're talking about with the defense being a little tired, a little gassed at the end of possessions and the change of pace. I think the buy or sell, to be honest, I always say buy. I think Price just looks good right now. Why not give him more till he's out of everything?
I think that the explanation that you just explained about, more tired at the end of drives and things like that may have come from the other co-host and not this co-host of the show.
Not Trevor, to be honest.
That doesn't sound like something I said. We'll have to quiz Jesse when he comes back.
The way that I've been explaining it to people is I think Jeremiah Love is their best player. I think Jadarian Price is their best running back.
Yeah.
There's things that Jeremiah Love can do that, frankly, not a lot of other players in the country can do, let alone other running backs. But I think Price is their most patient runner. I think he's their best lateral cutting runner. But he's not catching a one-handed wheel route and stiff-arming a safety into an end zone.
Right.
That's Jeremiah Love. Like, that's kind of the difference between them. But you need both. So
do you think, because you guys are more X's and O's than I get into most of the time, but is it possible that Price has less focus on him as well than Love? Because when Love's in the game, you have 8 players.
I do think
focused
there's
on him.
something now. We're 5 games into the season now at this point. So if you're a defensive coordinator or a defensive player watching film of Jadarian Price, shame on you if you're relaxing when number 24 is in the game. But I do feel like there is more overall attention paid to Jeremiah Love than Jadarian Price. But I also feel like Price is a more patient runner. I think he is seeing blocks and anticipating blocks better than Jeremiah Love. I think Love gets out, still gets he's been more patient, I think, the last couple of games, but I do think he still gets out ahead of his skis sometimes when it comes to some of that stuff. Doesn't always let him set up the way he needs to, doesn't quite see the crease in the way Jadarian Price sees it. But I mean, like to Trevor's point, 15 carries to 1 carry in the first half, Love and Price the other day against Boise State. That just doesn't make sense to me. Like the way that their carries are split right now, Love has 82, and these are just rushing attempts. 82, he has 444 yards. Jadarian Price has 48 carries. He has 356 yards. So he's within 88 yards of him with almost half as many carries. And like Trevor said, he's averaging 2 yards per carry more. It's 7.4 to 5.4 right now. Jadarian Price is scoring a touchdown every 6th time he touches the ball. And listening to the broadcast the other day, it was every 5 times he touches the ball going in. Now, if the carries were exactly the same, that number is going to change a little bit for Jadarian Price, because of just the law of averages and all that stuff. But I still think when you're looking at 82 carries to 48 carries, I think he probably needs at least like in the 4 to 5 more rush attempts per game. Like that would be the minimal. Like if you bump it up that, give him 5 more carries per game. So like if you're going to go 2 possessions for Jeremiah Love and then 1 for Jadarian Price, somewhere in that ballpark, he's got to touch the ball more, it feels like.
Well, and then like you've talked about it before, and the whiteboard conversation. If you ever were going to do a real Wildcat, you could have them both doing stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm sorry, the chat's moved too much, but there was somebody in the chat said, what a lovely problem to have for a program, to have both guys like that. I just think that here's another. I think Price, I would give him more. However, if you're giving Price more and like they have a rough game or one game doesn't go great, it's like, why didn't you give it to Love more? Now, to that point, to Trevor and Sean's point, 1 carry and a half, that's ridiculous. I don't know why. I don't know what game script there is where it's, oh, we'll just get him 1 carry a half. And I guess maybe you're saving him for the end of the year. I guess save injury. It just makes no sense.
But
does it?
But no, I mean, who are you saving for the end of the year? Like
Price, if he only has 1 carry per half.
But I mean, you should be worried about getting your star running back, like both of them through the year. But this is a J1 Sider thing. Like when you look at how he handled those 2 running backs at Penn State last year, like you didn't have a third back who was seeing significant time. And those 2 guys, like the carries right now are about the same as what those guys were doing at Penn State last year. It almost like, do you think that Sider is trying to win Jeremiah Love a Heisman, or like getting him into Heisman conversation with the way with the usage that he's got so far?
To a degree. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the first part of the show, Sean. I think that some of the injuries to Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams to start the season really kind of threw a wrench in what the perceived running back rotation was going to be. So then I think they just relied on, hey, we got 2 guys. We're going to ride with them. But I mean, unfortunately, I don't know if you're going to be able to win the Heisman with 440 rushing yards through, 5 games? I mean, Ashton Genty didn't win the Heisman Trophy, and he had like 1,000 rushing yards at this point in the season. So, like, I just maybe, but.
No, that's a good point. But it doesn't make sense. Would you rather have a player be up for Heisman candidacy that's probably not going to get it anyway? Or would you rather make sure that you're developing your offense for every game?
Exactly. because because again, like when you look at the way the two run and the fact that there is not a drop off, and in some cases there is actually an increase in run production when you have Price on the field compared to Love. Again, like to the point, yeah, it's a great problem to have. You've got to have at least two really good running backs if you're going to be successful. But for Jeremiah Love and for Notre Dame to be successful beyond November and into December and January, because that is still the goal, it feels like you would want to be giving the ball more to Jadarian Price right now to make sure that you're not putting too much on the legs and knees and everything else of Jeremiah Love, because you're going to need him to make another successful playoff run. Because let's be honest, if they're not in the playoffs, I don't think either one of them is playing in a bowl game once you get past November, if they're not in the playoffs this year.
Well, that's a whole different issue. It's an accurate one, I'm saying, but is the development of Carr and the way that he's been able to throw the ball kind of changing how they do the running game, though? Because if he wasn't starting out so hot, they'd have more people in the box, and neither running back would probably be putting up good numbers, and they'd probably have to rotate more just to wear down people and stay fresh. But now it's like we have all these options on offense as Notre Dame, and it's that's the wonderful problem I think it is. In terms of the Heisman thing, does it matter? I think that's an old person thing. I don't think that matters as much as it used to.
Did you just throw a shot right at me?
Like, yeah, I looked away from the camera to look at you. But yeah, I do think that's a misnomer anymore. I think, yeah, it's nice to be up for candidacy of it, and it's cool to get the publicity. I don't think that matters.
You don't think a running back coach cares if his running back, wins
maybe
an award
a running
like
back
that?
Coach or any lower coach, not the head coach. They want to win games. They want to develop the program to make the playoffs, especially with the way they can transfer and move around. I don't think a Heisman means as much as it used to.
By the way, Trevor, side note here. Did you see the tweet that Dela McCullough had before the game about Ashton Genty? He called him Deuce, but he talked about, they were going to be watching the Notre Dame Boise State game together, obviously, because Genty went to Boise State. But McCullough was talking about the kind of development that Love and Price had prior to this year. It feels like there's a little bit of a running back coach rivalry going on, maybe, because like Sider has mentioned, like every once in a while when Sider does media, he'll talk about, well, the old running back coach did this, we're doing this, like he'll make those comments.
I remember that. In one of his latest press conferences, I think Sider said something to the point of like, their previous running back coach taught them to be good running backs. I'm teaching them to be good football players.
Right.
And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
there's some ego involved there.
A little bit.
Hurt feelings.
All right. Over under 4.5 more times Notre Dame scores at least 50 points in a game this season.
Ooh.
Trevor?
Oh gosh. I'm taking the under.
No, come on. You're supposed to take the over, and then I can argue the under. You're not helping me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take the over.
No. Okay. Well,
look, this offense has been electric so far this season. Slight hiccup against Boise State, but we're talking about them going over 50 points 5 in their next 7 games. That's a lot of points. And I don't know if they're going to be able to put up 51 against Navy like they did last year. Look, Navy had 5-6 turnovers last year against Notre Dame, and 3 of them were just from Blake Horvath with his injured thumb dropping the football. I don't know if you're going to have that type of success. So I'm going to take the under. I think you're going to play some better teams. I think you're going to be playing some better offenses, which is going to result in Notre Dame not having the ball as much. So I unfortunately am taking the under. I would love for it to be the over. But
I'm curious because you mentioned Navy, and Navy, obviously you always bet the under because the way they run the clock and the way they do their schemes. So are you saying they're the linchpin to this? If it was 4 games over under 50 points?
Yeah, I could very well.
Maybe is it?
Yeah, I do, because I could absolutely see them going over 50 against Stanford. They're atrocious. I could see them going over on Syracuse because, unfortunately, after they lost Angeli, the the wheels have kind of fallen off.
Mm-hmm.
Boston College's defense is Swiss cheese, and Pitt's defense, it's kind of eh. And then I'm never going to bank on Notre Dame going for over 50 points against a rival in USC. That's tough. They got close last year, but you needed 2 pick sixes at the end of the game to get to 49.
Right. And but I do think USC's defense is probably even worse this year than it was.
Yeah, but like he said,
year.
you got 14 bonus points, so without that, you're down to 35.
I want to go over, but I think that
the only reason the over could hit is because they cannot take off their foot off the gas of any of these games. Like, you have to beat all your opponents by what you have to beat them to, because you lost your 2 best opponents. So if you're going to make the playoff, you have to really throttle down and make it as big of a gap as you can every game.
Yeah, and I think that where they also might dial down is like what happened against Purdue, where they're going to have some reserves in the game, if at all possible, in the fourth quarter. And, so they might get to, obviously they broke 50 against Purdue. But what I'm saying is, you might see them throttling down, and you're not necessarily going to get that high. I think 4 is very doable, though, against these 7 teams that they've got the rest of the way. And again, it's NC State, USC, Navy, Syracuse, Stanford, BC, and Pittsburgh. I think 4 is a very doable number to break 50.
Because I agree with what Trevor said, though. I think it's Navy. The way they melt the clock, unless something breaks just the right way, and they got lucky last year.
Well, and turnovers
Right.
were a huge part of how that game unfolded last year. Very uncharacteristic. I don't think Navy had barely turned the ball over, if at all, going into that game, and they just imploded against Notre Dame
with
in
a
that
broken
game.
thumb. But also, I'm saying that as you get later in the year, you have to put more statement wins out there to try and show the committee that you deserve the playoff run. And I know nobody wants to talk about that. That's kind of what we're getting at here, and especially when there's not a lot of ranked teams left for them to show anything against.
Yeah.
Well, and like Indy Forever 72 was saying, let's not talk about playoffs,
I
pipe
know.
it down, get ahead of yourself. But look, you still coming into every season, that's what you're playing for. And I'm not saying you put the cart in front of the horse, but what I'm saying is you do have to manage your team as if you are going to play more than just 12 or 13 games when it's all said and done, because you still have the opportunity to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd still even play devil's advocate and say now's the perfect time to start talking about the playoffs. Look at these next 2 weeks of college football, big picture. I mean, look, Notre Dame moved up 5 spots in the AP poll by beating Boise State 28-7. They didn't do it because they beat Boise State. They did it because all of college football around them was kind of college footballing. But if Notre Dame would have beaten Boise State at home like 21-17, just an ugly game where it's just nobody really pulled away, Notre Dame just had the better athletes at the end of the day, I don't know if they move up 5 spots. So you have to hope for chaos around you. And to Bobby's point and to Sean's point, you just have to handle business, and you have to beat these inferior teams like they are the inferior teams.
Exactly. We will take a timeout. When we come back, we've got more rapid fire Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat, IrishBreakdown.com, rapid fire. I'm trying to open the mics coming out of the break, and Bobby just wants to keep on yapping over there.
Well, Sean keeps throwing stuff out at me, and it's like, all right.
Maybe you keep throwing stuff out at me. Did you ever think of it that way?
Well, you keep replying, so who's in the wrong here? Be the bigger person, Sean.
What's up, Trevor?
Hey.
At least there's one nice person here.
Oh, come on, Bobby. You're too sweet, man. Come on.
Well, I won't be like that to Sean, so.
North Carolina lost 38-10 to Clemson to fall to 2-3 last weekend. My question to you guys, is Bill Belichick risking his legacy with this whole college coaching experiment?
Knowing when to walk away, I think, is a very undervalued part of sports. I mean, you talk about guys like Brett Favre, and it's like, a lot of people remember him for what he did with the Packers. I also remember him for what he did with the Jets and the Vikings. I mean, with Bill Belichick, sometimes it's like you kind of have to know when it's your time to be done. And I also think that with all of the just weirdness around that program right now, even for stuff off the football field, I think that's also weird. So I would err on the side of yeah.
So there's two questions here. You saying, is he damaging his legacy? And Trevor's talking about when people need to learn how to walk away. I love both conversations, but I don't think he's risking his legacy. Look at Nick Saban, who went to the pros. Did he risk his legacy because he left LSU with the championship, went to the pros, epic failure with the Dolphins, went back to Alabama? So I don't think that he's risking his legacy. His legacy is already that he might have the most successful career as a coach ever. Even as a coordinator, when he stopped the Bills, when he was on the Giants as a defensive coordinator under Parcells, I think he already has his legacy built. This would have been another feather in the cap. I don't think he's risked losing anything. To your point, the only part is maybe the off-field stuff with his lady friend or whatever. So that part might be true, but I think we look back, you talk about Brett Favre, there's a lot of people that have switched career or teams at the end of their career, and we just give them a pass. Like Joe Namath didn't finish with the Jets. Johnny Unitas didn't finish with the Colts. Everybody, if you look back, not everybody, but a lot of the players, they switch teams at the end for a couple more paychecks, and we just give them a pass after enough amount of time's gone by. So I don't think that part of it's true, that the walking away is what's tarnishing his legacy. I think it might be his off the field stuff, but I think we can all agree that maybe it's an epic disaster.
It is an epic disaster.
At the minimum.
It is an epic disaster because right now there's a big question about whether or not they're even going to win a game against a Power 4 opponent this season. They've been outscored like 120-33 by Power 4 competition this year after getting shellacked. I think Dabo took it easy on him in the second half. I think it was I think that they they were up like what, 35-10 in the first half or something. They ended up winning 38. I think Dabo felt sorry for him, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Did you see that they, Hulu was going to do like a season long following North Carolina and Bill Belichick, and they just announced that they've already canceled that. Like North Carolina decided we don't need this train wreck out there on TV to go along with the train wreck that's on TV every Saturday. So I agree to an extent with what Bobby's saying. I think big picture, like 20 years from now, the whole, it'll be a sidebar. Oh, and by the way, he went and tried to coach in college. It didn't work out very well, but he's still going to be Bill Belichick, the guy who won all the Super Bowls and who was dominant for more than 2 decades in the NFL, and what he did as a coordinator with the New York Giants before that as well. So I don't think that, I think that because of the social media world where everything is plastered out there, world that we live in right now, right now it all seems amplified, but I think we get a few years down the road, no one's going to care one way or another. It's mostly going to be, and he also, dated someone who was young enough to be his granddaughter.
Well, it depends how far down the path that goes. But I think the Bill Belichick, the way he ended up in New England, might be that would have been where his legacy could be questioned, because it's like, how did he end up in the whole mix with the Jets, Browns, and then end up in New England? He's been fired. But all that stuff we let go. So I don't think there's a reason why a failed college run, it's something that you could argue is new to him because it's the college game, not the pro game, and recruiting and the NIL, and he jumped in too old. I think we'll let it all go eventually. I don't think it'll take 20 years. I think it'll take a couple of years once we're like, yeah, that was stupid. Like, would we look bad at Mac Brown for the last few years that he had at North Carolina?
Yeah. You still think of Mac Brown as a guy who won a national championship at Texas, but maybe largely underachieved for a good deal of his career.
Well, that's the whole point too. But I'm saying just because he had a bad couple of years at the end of North Carolina, we don't change the way we think about him as a whole.
Yeah.
I just don't think that the ending always is your epitaph. It's I don't know.
I agree.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm more of a, maybe it's just recency bias, but it's some cases are alike and others are different. My pushback with the Nick Saban one is he wasn't near the end of his coaching career when he tried the NFL. Right. I think Bill Belichick was at the end of his coaching career and then tried college.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just the wrong time to get into it.
See, I could argue almost the opposite, saying like, okay, if you're in the middle of your coaching career, now is the best time to try this because you're hot, you're doing your stuff. Whereas now it's almost like Belichick. What do you think Belichick's expectations were for this year? It wasn't to win a national championship.
Well, it wasn't to win a national championship, but they came in, he and Michael Lombardi, his general manager, came in basically bragging to the world that this is going to be, the next NFL franchise, basically. Like, we're going to set you up for your chance to go to the NFL. Quite honestly, it's the same kind of stuff that Charlie Weiss was talking about when he came in flashing Super Bowl rings when he came to Notre Dame. And I think it is, a very transactional type situation. And when you look at a guy like Bill Belichick, it has always been transactional. And it's why I didn't think that, his way of doing things in the NFL was very cutthroat. And you can't be like that in college. It's college athletics are in a much, much different place than they were 40 years ago when you had, the Tom Osborns and the Barry Switzers and, those kind of people, the Marcus Freeman model, quite honestly, is much more the model of today, a coach who relates to players, and that's not what Bill Belichick is. He does not relate to players. He has never really, you've heard the stories about, he's a much funnier guy behind closed doors and all that kind of stuff. And there was some of that with Charlie Weiss as well. But I mean, it's just a much more transactional model that Bill Belichick has. And that's why I think a lot of it has just fallen completely flat. And I'm really curious to see how long they let it last in North Carolina, because obviously there was a separation between the athletic department and the people above Bubba Cunningham in terms of what they wanted and who they wanted for that job. Bill Belichick was not wanted by the athletic director, but people above him got their way because he was a very high profile guy. But I think that he thought he was going to come in and at the very least win 8 or 9 games this year and give himself one last chance to get back to the NFL, because he didn't get that chance after he was let go in New England.
Well, there you go. I think that's it. To go back to your first question, your legacy question is he got let go by New England. He didn't leave on his own accord, and he might not reply well to the players, but he'll probably get along with their girlfriends at the same age as the one he has. But like I said, I just don't think that it's going to really tarnish his legacy. But then who's his defensive coordinator?
I have no clue.
Steven Belichick.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I think part of what they're doing, he wanted to go for a year. Like you say, maybe I think just a bowl season was enough for him, and he'd be gone again, either to the NFL or retire to broadcasting or podcasting or whatever. And his son would take over as the heir apparent. And that's all he wanted to do, was just keep it good enough to get to him next year. So, I mean, the problem with his legacy, to your point, might not be his legacy, but he can't leave it to his son because they're both going to get fired.
Well, yeah. Another big thing that came out of the NFL this week, Cardinals running back Emari Demercado dropping the ball in celebration before crossing the goal line at the end of a long run against the Tennessee Titans ended up being the difference in a 1-point loss to Tennessee. So I've got a couple different things on this. One, what would you do with a player who does something like that? I'm dropping the ball before I cross the goal line.
I'd bury him on the bench. I mean, if I'm a coach and you can't do the one thing that you're expected to do as a running back, and it's ball security, it's not even like somebody forced the fumble. You just got too excited and dropped the ball before the goal line. I think that's crazy. And the Colts did the same thing to A.D. Mitchell this past week. Absolutely benched him and didn't see the field
because he cost him the game the week before.
Mm-hmm. And so I would say you bench him. I think you bury him on the bench and you make him earn his way back up.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is he was already fourth in the depth chart before the season started.
Well, and that's the thing. The only reason he got a chance is
so
because they've got two running backs who were already hurt already. Trey Benson had knee surgery last week, and Connor the week before, or not the week before, but Connor was already injured. So it's the only reason he was getting an opportunity to begin with, because other guys were hurt. Like, he was getting his chance out there.
And he was still the backup even last week.
Yeah.
This week, whatever you want to call it. And then, so that was his one carry that he broke through the line and got through. And if I'm him, yeah, you'd think that might be your one big break. You might carry the ball for another 5-6 inches just to get in. It's been an epidemic in the NFL this year, though. Several, like you said, the Colts game, same thing. That was the biggest play of the game, and the guy dropped it. And then it's not even just a fumble, or it's a turnover coming back the other way. So you don't get your points, and they get the ball. It's like a technical almost in basketball.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
find them, bench them.
So what you said about
cut them,
a player like that, I would like to easily say cut it. The same thing happened to me MLB playoffs. Somebody didn't run to first and got out on an error. What can you do? I think the best you can do is bury him on the bench. And especially on a roster where it's depleted by injuries.
Yeah, I mean, then you've got to either bring somebody up from the practice squad who you didn't think was as good as him to begin with, or you've got to go out on the street and try to sign somebody who may or may not be as good as him, at that point. So, like, cutting him bench, they're in a little bit of a tough spot, because the other side of the, I think as a team, you should have the right to fine a player if you want. Like, hit him in the pocketbook, well, at least you can keep him around.
Yeah.
But, like Jonathan Gannon, the head coach, that's the other side of this. He, not only got up and berated him in his face, but he, thumped him in the chest a couple of times after it happened. Now, he did go back and apologize. Like, what do you think about that side of things? The beratement by the head coach of a player like that on the sideline? Trevor?
I mean, good for him for acknowledging the player. I mean, again, it's just one of I think there are some mistakes that you make in sports, and I think that is one of those that is just inexcusable.
I agree. And it seems like these things, I don't know why, but like you said, like this season, but like the whole flipping the ball before you cross the goal line is like, as a player in the mentality, like once you cross the goal line, you can do whatever you want with the football. Why are these guys, why is it in their nature that's like, I got to toss the ball before, I got to start to flip it before I even get there because I'm so cool.
It's coming to a head, but it had been 10, 15 years ago, and I can't remember if it was Odell Beckham or someone in a high school game, the San Antonio game. He did a head flip before the end zone. And he landed on his head before the end zone. The ball popped out, and it was a fumble. So this has been happening. It just seems like it's getting more and more prevalent. And the coach going after him, I think that's okay. It shows that he's in tune with his team. Because I feel like if you're that comfortable with your guy that you can get in his face, that's just your style. Like, we want to all have Marcus Freeman as our coach, or I would say, you're doing okay, but like, it's okay for me. Like, Nick Saban wasn't that sweet on the sidelines with his players.
And he didn't just do this in a blowout situation. He did it in a game they ended up losing by.
They blew the lead on.
Right. Blew a big lead, and they ended up losing by 1 point as a result. All right, we'll take our final timeout. Back to wrap up Rapid Fire and Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire. Sean Stires along with Trevor Trowbridge and Bobby Hensley on this kind of dreary-looking Tuesday outside. But as we were talking about earlier, some frost in the morning the next couple of days. Kind of exciting as fall
Football weather
makes its way in. It is football weather. Delightful. Fill in the blank. Start with Trevor, the Bengals fan, on this one. The Cincinnati Bengals trading with the Browns for Joe Flacco today is blank.
Pointless. I'm sorry. I'll just call it like I see it. Look, at the end of the day, you could go pick up whatever quarterback you want. Your starting running back is averaging 2.5 yards a carry. And that offensive line cannot protect. I mean, they could put up cement walls in front of them and they still couldn't stop a pass rush. And Joe Flacco's like 50 years old. And so it's all going to be the same. I've never seen a team more reliant on one individual person than the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow.
It's kind of amazing. But I mean, Browning does have 8 interceptions and he's only played parts of 4 games.
Gunslinger.
I realize Flacco's literally on his last legs at this point. But doesn't it feel like if you've got 2 receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, like at least Flacco gives them a better chance to get the ball to them? Because
and Gesicki at tight end, you got some weapons.
Yeah, but I mean, you literally have the best 1-2 punch in terms of wide receivers in the NFL. And the fact that Jake Browning, until the other day, barely knew who number 1 was, doesn't Flacco at least give him a little bit better chance to get them the ball?
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, Jake Browning started games for the Bengals when Joe Burrow tore that tendon in his wrist. So it's not like he was a free agent pickup and he didn't pan out. And now they need
it's
to
also
find a new
why
guy.
he should have been better this year, I think.
Agreed.
The organization should have known more about what they were getting from him. The fact that
he
had
a better backup in place, just in case, to your point, that you need something that you're not relying on Joe Burrow for everything.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's tough. I think you had the opportunity to go get a Jameis Winston, who's a little bit younger and a little bit more athletic in the pocket than Joe Flacco.
Still did have a chance to go get him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in fact, why? I wonder if they inquired with the Giants at all about trading for Winston, considering he's buried on their depth chart in New York.
Dart came out with a questionable tag out of Sunday's game, and he got cleared to be healthy today. But I wonder if they wanted to keep him. But how many more weeks is Joe Burrow out? It's not the whole season.
No, but he's not going to be back until after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So by then your season's already over.
Season. Yeah.
Yeah. Just Browning's not it, but Joe Flacco. What about Joe Flacco makes him appealing in a trade? I don't see. Yeah, he won a Super Bowl 20 years ago. That's it. I mean, we joke about. Well, not joke, but Browning does have a lot of interceptions. He's at least throwing the ball. He won the first game that Burrow got hurt. He actually brought them back. If you're
arguing for Jake Browning over Joe Flacco right now, I might as well just shut off your microphone, because I haven't watched the Cincinnati Bengals the way Trevor has probably watched the Cincinnati Bengals. But again, having Jamar Chase on my fantasy football team as an example and seeing the fact, no, I'm just saying I'm not.
Oh, you're hurt.
My point is, Jake Browning, until this past week, barely knew Jamar Chase existed on that team. And that's a problem for a guy who's been around in that organization for 5 years.
The NFL as a whole, there's only so many quarterbacks that are game-changing. Look at the Ravens' struggles losing Lamar Jackson. It might be more one-man reliant than – because going to Cooper Rush just wasn't it for them. And then they went from being an elite team to absolutely not having a shot. But
bringing in Cooper Rush was also a problem, considering the kind of quarterback Lamar Jackson is and the kind of quarterback that Cooper Rush is. I thought that was very foolish of the Ravens.
Hopefully one of your guys' teams trades for Tua and he can leave Miami and then they can start rebuilding. Yeah, no, you don't want him?
Trevor is shaking his head. No, that plays on the YouTube stream, but not on radio.
Yeah. There's only so many quarterbacks, honestly, in the league that can game change and be prolific. And yes, that's Burrow. Yes, that's Lamar.
And I mean, I'm not expecting Flacco to be prolific, but I mean, this was an organizational problem.
So you're saying it was a good move for them?
because like you talk about how bad their offensive line is, but they made the decision to draft Jamar Chase instead of a left tackle a few years ago when Jamar Chase was coming out of school. All right, we got to wrap it up with that. Trevor, appreciate you as always. Bobby, somewhat anyway.
It's mutual.
I'll talk to both of you guys
mutual.
on Thursday. We've got Wake Up the Echoes coming up in the next hour.
Bang.